Quanto è difficile scegliere
How difficult is it to choose a boat? Not only because there are so many types, but also because there are different propulsion systems.
Questa è Alchimia 28, costruita da BIMAX.
This is the Alchimia 28, built by BIMAX. We've already seen and tested it, but today we want to do something different. We want to compare two identical boats on which two different propulsion systems are installed.
Da una parte un motore diesel con
On one side, a diesel engine with an outboard propulsion. On the other side, an inboard engine plus an electric motor. In other words, a hybrid propulsion.
Nella propulsione ibrida, il motore entrobordo è collegato al sistema di propulsione.
In hybrid propulsion, the inboard engine is connected to the eco-drive system, which consists of a transmission shaft housed in a fiberglass skeg, inside of which there is also a gearbox. The propeller is facing forward, and these features make it a very efficient system.
Conosciamo bene la prerogativa della...
We are familiar with the characteristic of hybrid propulsion. The ability to navigate for certain stretches in electric mode, without noise, without emissions. Then there's another important aspect. Here we have two engines, so if one were to experience a breakdown, there's the other one. However, we also need to consider the weight of the electric propulsion, which totals 225 kilograms.
Il piedepoppiero ha I suoi vantaggi, è brande.
The stern drive has its advantages. It is maneuverable, allowing for easier and more precise maneuvering. Furthermore, it is trimmable, allowing for adjustment of the hull setting during navigation.
Il confronto tra le diverse...
The comparison between different propulsions must be on equal terms, and thus, on both boats, the FPT S30 engine has been installed, a highly reliable and durable diesel, as demonstrated by its numerous applications, including those in road transport. It's a 3-litre 4-cylinder with common rail fuel injection, turbo and aftercooler, capable of delivering 230 horsepower. Naval Motor Botti, a significant distributor of FPT, has optimized the electronic mappings of the engine for this boat.
Il motore elettrico è
The
costruito...
electric motor is manufactured by Mytec and is of the synchronous type with permanent magnets. It has a power output of 7 kilowatts. Mytec has been involved in electric navigation for 10 years and has actively collaborated with the shipyard in setting up the system, which consists exclusively of components made in Italy.
Anche il motore elettrico ha bisogno di un impianto...
The electric motor also requires a cooling system made with a closed circuit that exchanges heat with seawater. The electric motor is connected to the transmission shaft via a belt and functions as an alternator, meaning it charges the batteries when the diesel engine is active. Lithium batteries with a capacity of 280 ampere hours and a voltage of 48 volts are used as the energy reservoir.
Cominciamo il test con il modello a propulsione ibrida.
For now, let's begin the test with the hybrid propulsion model. The electric motor starts like this, simply by pressing a button, and the system activates. There's also an emergency safety button to shut everything down in one go. And then it's just a matter of adjusting the lever.
È un modo diverso di navigare.
It's a different way to navigate in absolute silence. Very pleasant.
Un po' come in auto sappiamo che...
A bit like a car, we know we're not polluting, but we also know we'll have limited range.
A quanto?
To what extent? Well, find out now, and you might be surprised.
Sul display della Simrad vengono mostrate tutte le funzionalità.
On the Simrad display, all the functionalities of the electric motor are shown. The RPM, the power being delivered, the temperature of the controller and the motor.
E poi naturalmente la velocità.
And of course, the speed and battery status.
Questa imbarcazione in particolare verrà utilizzata.
This particular boat will be used in the protected marine area of Gaeta Islands, where it can navigate without disturbing the ecosystem.
Velocità
Speed 3 knots, engine at 2,200 RPM. It's delivering a power of only 2 kilowatts. Let's look at the other performances.
Si naviga con la stessa atmosfera che si prova su una
It
barca
feels
vera.
like sailing on a sailboat, but we're on a motorboat, and that doesn't require 1,000 adjustments and effort.
Con il motore alla potenza
With the engine running at 3.7 kilowatts, we're cruising at 4 knots.
Siamo partiti dal porto da 20
We've
minuti.
been out of the harbour for 20 minutes. The battery charge was at 89%. Now it's at 85%.
In 20 minuti abbiamo usato pochissima
In
energia.
20 minutes, we've used very little energy. There's a significant difference in consumption depending on the speed at which you're travelling. Now I'm pushing it to the maximum.
Barca con poco carico a bordo, solo
A boat with a light load on board, only 3 people. We're beyond 5 knots. We reached a peak of 5.7 knots.
Il motore sta erogando circa 5.
The engine is delivering about 5.7 kilowatts at 3,400 RPM. And at this speed, the maximum,
Possiamo navigare
we can navigate for 3 hours according to the calculations made by the shipyard. 3 hours beyond 5 knots.
BIMAX in ogni caso è un cantiere che costruisce
BIMAX is a shipyard that builds few boats, almost tailor-made for each application, for each customer.
E quindi questi dati, questi
So
valori
these data, these values, could also be extended with a larger battery capacity, for example.
Adesso
Now I'll put it in neutral,
spengo
turn off the electric motor
e
and
accendo
start the diesel one.
Non eravamo
We weren't used to hearing this noise anymore.
Adesso proviamo le prestazioni con questo motore.
Now let's test the performance with this engine, the FPT S30 diesel, with 230 horsepower and the EcoDrive system propulsion, with a shaft line and a forward-facing propeller.
Plana subito.
It planes immediately with a minimal trim angle at just 8 knots. 2,200 RPM, 12 knots, 12 litres per hour. Very easy calculation, 1 litre per mile.
Abbiamo perso il silenzio, ma abbiamo
We've
guadagnato.
lost the silence but gained speed. We're at 20 knots with a consumption of 23 litres per hour.
Ancora molto economica.
Still very economical, very efficient.
Magnifica sulle onde.
It's magnificent on the waves, very smooth, also because the running angle is just right, perfect.
Velocità massima.
Maximum speed at 3,800 RPM is 27 knots.
Adesso è il momento di provare al.
Now it's time to try the Alchimia 28 with the outboard propulsion.
Ma prima voglio raccontarvi una
But
storia.
first, I want to tell you a story related to this model.
Sappiamo che la Corea del Sud.
We know that South Korea is a leader in shipbuilding, for cargo, for passengers,
Ma la navigazione da diporto non
but
si è
recreational boating hasn't fully developed yet. And a Korean entrepreneur decided to import this very Alchimia 28 boat from BIMAX to this country.
Strano? No.
Strange? No, because perhaps sometimes we forget that we have something of immersive value called Made in Italy.
E all'estero tutto
And
quello
abroad,
che
everything we do here in Italy is always highly appreciated.
il motore
The engine, as I've already mentioned, is always the same, FPT S30 with 230 horsepower.
la portiamo in planata. Trim.
We bring it to plane, trim all the way down and flaps lowered.
Ah, plana subito anche questa. 8 nodi.
It planes immediately too, 8 knots and we're already in trim. Only the tachometer reads 2,200 RPM, and before, on the other boat, with a shaft line, at this RPM, we were at 12 knots.
Adesso sono a.
But now it's at 3,050 RPM.
Sull'altra imbarcazione.
On the other boat, at this RPM, we were cruising at 20 knots with a consumption of 23 litres.
Il consumo adesso è in.
The consumption now is unchanged, but we're at 13.5 knots.
La spiegazione c'è. Qui sono stati
The
utilizzati.
explanation is that shorter pitch propellers were used here compared to those used on the shaft line.
Evidentemente, in base al rapporto di riduzione.
Evidently, based on the reduction ratio, they have had to choose this pitch.
E adesso
Now let's push it to the maximum. Full throttle.
togliendo completamente i flap e
By
regolando
completely removing the flaps and adjusting the trim very precisely, we reach the same speed as the other boat, 27 knots.
la
The
potenza.
power is the same.
Qual è la
What is the difference between these two different boats? Between these two propulsion systems?
La velocità massima, come abbiamo visto, è la stessa perché la potenza del motore in fondo è uguale. Ma
As we have seen, the maximum speed is the same because the engine power is ultimately equal, but the additional weight of the hybrid propulsion seems to be offset by a greater efficiency of the eco-drive system, which has demonstrated its maximum effectiveness at cruising speeds. At the same engine RPM, it achieves a much higher speed, resulting in significantly lower fuel consumption per mile.
come è possibile che una
How is it possible for a shaft line to have this efficiency? Usually, traditional shaft lines are inclined at a significant angle toward the bottom. They therefore waste a large proportion of energy because they direct power and thrust in a direction that's incorrect, not aligned with the boat's motion parallel to the surface.
ma Eco Drive System
However, the eco-drive system has a shaft line inclined by just a few degrees, barely 7 degrees, which reduce to 2 to 3 degrees when the boat is planing. This is the reason why it manages to be so efficient.
Prima di concludere, adesso voglio mostrarvi qualche dettaglio di questa.
Before concluding, I'd like to show you some details of this Alchimia 28. It's a versatile boat, suitable for many different uses, for fishing, for leisure, and who knows what else. It has a long T-top, two different types of windshields, one of which is tiltable. The guardrail is high and secure. There are various customization possibilities, not only in terms of colors and layout. You can choose pilot seats, fold-away cockpit seats, and a different arrangement for the galley. Below deck, you'll find a berth for 2 people, furniture, and a bathroom.
A voi la scelta
The
della
choice of layout, finishes, and propulsion is up to you.